Hello, this is Adam with Daily Grind Digital, and today we are going to go over using the collection list section inside of the DGD Crusade Shopify theme. So right here I have a collection list section added into the theme. If you don't know, you just go down here to add section and it's the collection list. And so one thing to note real quick is you have collection blocks in here. So all of these are blocks. This just says products because I assigned a products collection to it. But they're all collection blocks. You can add up to 12 in this section. If you go into the section settings, you have your alignment, align wide, and align full, which is just going to affect how wide this will stretch on full screen. Then you have your padding top, padding bottom, so right here you can see, let's go from padding large to padding small on top. You can see that some of that gap here decreased, and then you also have to be aware of what the padding is on this one. So this one, this section above it, this image up here might have a large padding on the bottom. So if you wanted to decrease that space, you would need to go into that section and decrease it, of course. You've got your padding bottom. So right now we've got extra large. If we change that to small, you can see that it shifted in on the bottom here. You've got your layout, so grid layout, and you have carousel layout. So this is your grid where of course, you've got your grid here and then carousel. So carousel gives you these little arrow features to go back and forth. So let's go into full screen real quick. So you can see there's actually 4 when you're in full screen mode, and then if you click next, it'll shift. But as you're getting more into like a desktop and tablet mode, it does shift down to 3 here. Now when you're in grid, it's a little different there. So you can see the 4 there. One thing to note here is you have mobile collections per row. This only works when you are in grid mode. So you have to have this set to grid for this to work. And you also have to have enable slider unchecked as it is now. If you enable mobile slider, then what's going to happen is, so right now we have it set to grid. If we go to mobile, you've got two cards per row on mobile, which is, we'll go back up to those settings, mobile collections per row. You've got 2. You can go down to 1 if you want. We'll set it back to 2. Also note you have this mobile height feature and desktop height. So this is right here is desktop height, but you've got your mobile height. So if you wanted to make those larger, probably, might not be the most ideal thing for you, but if you want to, you can. Right here, you can make them smaller. So that might be something more of your taste there. But also note that it's going to look different when you drop it down to 1. So that's why it's always good to have those settings, because then you might want to make your mobile card that large, and that actually looks more reasonable. So if you go back here to 2, that setting, you might be kind of like, hey, why would you ever need to make it that large? It's for probably more commonly going to be used if you're using 1 card there. But so you have that height setting, but this is only, if you want to have a grid, so if you go to desktop, if you want to have a grid on desktop, but to have a slider on mobile, then while you're set to this grid layout, you still can have a mobile slider. So you can have a grid layout on desktop. If you click enable slider, while you have that desktop grid layout, you can have a mobile slider enabled. So, but I just want to make clear that this this layout, this grid layout of 2 product cards, is only going to work if you have the layout up here set to grid, which impacts both mobile and desktop. If you set this layout to carousel, then on mobile, it doesn't matter if you have this option selected or not, your mobile and your desktop is going to be carousel. So just please note that. So now your mobile's carousel, and your desktop is carousel. That being said, let's go over a couple more of these settings real quick. I'll try to move faster now that we made it through that explanation. Grid gap is how much of a gap you're going to see between the cards. If you notice, nothing happened there, so you might be like, hey, this doesn't work. Well, just in case, because actually I've made this mistake before, so don't feel silly if you do. I'm probably the silly one, but you have to have it set to grid to see the grid gap take effect. So if you set it to grid, you can see there's this gap between the cards. So there's a grid gap there. And if we go back to large, you can see that now it decreases, or you can go to default and it decreases a little bit more. So that is what the grid gap does there. You've got your desktop height, of course. So you've got your desktop card height. And remember, like, these layouts look different depending on, various settings. So if we go down to 3, that's going to change how things look a little bit. So this full height looks a little nicer on a setting of 3, but if you set it to 4 per row, you might not like that as much. It just depends. So just be aware. You have various settings, and they all impact things. What's nice is, say you like this layout on desktop, and then you like something else on mobile. If you're using 2 cards, maybe you do like this layout, but you have the option to switch to 1 if you'd rather, and adjust those settings there. So next we have section title. So this really isn't going to matter much on mobile, since we have like the long title, but say you just had the word featured. Now you can see it a little better on mobile. You can have align middle for this title. So you have your section title alignment. Here's your section title, or you can align left, or you can align right. That does impact both desktop and mobile. You have your title size. So if you want to make that title smaller, you can go down to, choose between your H1s through H6s, and those settings are made in the theme settings. There is a different video on theme settings because there's a lot of theme settings, and they're more, think of theme settings like global settings. So I say it in every video, but I like to make that clear just in case this is your first time watching. But just know that your H1 sizes, your heading sizes are determined in your theme settings, and then also your button sizes can be impacted there, and your colors. So your theme colors, your primary, secondary, and tertiary, and your gradient and your extra light gray, those are also set within theme settings. So that's and you can get there by clicking theme settings here. That's this little paintbrush icon, but again, there is a video going over the theme settings in detail. We're trying to give you everything that you would need to know what the theme offers, so you can make a purchase decision, or maybe you've already purchased the theme and you're actually trying to utilize it. So we're trying to be as helpful as we can there. Let's just go back into desktop mode just for the fun of it here. So we've touched on the section title alignment, the title. Now you have the size. So we touched on how this impacts the size. Also, just to let you know, we do have different sizes, so you can assign a font to your headings, and we have different. You can assign different font sizes based on device, so desktop, tablet, and mobile. That way, it's not the same sizes set across both devices. So that's a very nice feature. If you're curious about what I mean by that, you either can look in your theme settings or check out the video on theme settings, and you'll get a glimpse of that. You have your title color, so obviously that will impact the title of the section here, the section title color. But now you have your heading size. So heading size is actually the heading that's being pulled in on top of the card. So you can almost think of it as like the collection title size. is essentially what it is. So if I make it larger, you can see how big those words got. Of course, that doesn't look good. So just be aware that like changing the heading size is recommended to make it look the best on the card there. Um, then you have your button. So you do not have to have a button. You can get rid of the button, and this would still be clickable and take you to the collection because it's assigned to the collection. But if you do want a button, all you have to do is add the text. Your button will show. You can choose whether you want an arrow or not. You can choose the button size. Do you want it extra small? Do you want it large? That doesn't look too good. I'm going to put it back. Um, you have your button style. Do you want it solid? Do you want it to be an outline? Um, so here's your text color. So do you want it to be, let's do primary. So now that doesn't look the best. So I'm going to go back to white. Um, but you can see how that impacts it. You've got your text contrast. So do you want text contrast or not? Obviously, you can't see that title now that I took the contrast all the way off. So you do have the ability to drag and adjust that to make everything look the way you'd like it to look. And it really depends on the images you're using and things like that on what settings you're going to have to set. But the good thing is you have the settings at your disposal to be able to make most things work for you and make your life a lot easier. And then of course you have the enable slider. Remove margin bottom removes the entire margin on the bottom there. So now you can see there's no margin at all left. So if we would set this entire section, um, I'm sorry, I think I passed that over background. So here you have your background. Now, if we'd set it to black, obviously that doesn't look the best. We'd have to make some adjustments there, but now there's no gap here. There's no white gap. Whereas if we take let go of that margin bottom, now you got that little white margin or padding there, if you will. Forgive me if my wording's not correct, because my brother, who's the developer of this thing, would probably correct me. So let's go back out of the section settings, and we have our collection blocks. Again, you can add up to 12. Let's just go into one. And so I assign this to a products collection, which is here. Note, if you don't have an image assigned to your collection, they're going to show up like this without an image. But if you did assign an image to your collection, you would see an image here, and that's the image that this would pull. But from where I didn't assign an image to the collection, it's going to pull an image from the first product in the collection. But you can choose an image to overwrite that image. So I could upload an image if I wanted to. That would show here in place of that image. You have the option to contain image, which if the image is larger than the space provided, that will contain the image, shrink it down. If your image already fits within the card perfectly, then you're not going to notice a difference there by containing the image. You've got your image position. So if an image is too large, you can adjust it left or right. You can also do top and bottom. Again, you might not see changes in your image using those settings, but it just depends on the size of the image. If your image is too tall, or is a lot larger than the area lengthwise, then you will notice a change in top and bottom settings. But not it just depends on the image. And these settings, I don't tend to lean into them too much, but every once in a while they do save me, and an image that I want to use might look not the best on one device, and I'm able to make a slight adjustment to make that image work. And so every once in a while these settings can save you for sure, because you have the option to use pick and choose two different settings for that image alignment, image position on desktop and mobile. So this one's desktop, this one's mobile. Grid item settings. So this is the mobile one actually doesn't do anything to my knowledge. It's actually we'll probably strip this setting out, and because we're not using it right now, we set the theme up for like future improvements and stuff. But for our base theme, with what is working now. We're just launching with what is working. So you may see this mobile grid item settings with the mobile size. You may or may not see that in the theme, in the base theme that is purchasable. But in the future, we may release an update to the theme that utilizes this feature. Just please note that it may not be in the base theme. So your grid item size here, basically what this does is, so right now you've got a grid and there's, I guess you would say, 4 columns here. And then, so what this will do is if you go to medium, right now we're in this first collection block. So we're in this first collection block right here. And what this is going to do is if I go to medium, it's going to take up um, 2 columns. And then if I go to large, it's going to take up 3 columns. If I go to extra large, it's going to take up the entire um, top. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's going to take up the entire top row, if you will. Um, so that actually can enable some unique layouts, right? Because you could have this one stretch the whole top. You could allow the next 4 cards to fall under, and then you could add another one, and I could go in and stretch this very bottom one um, across the whole bottom. So if you wanted a layout sort of like this, you could do something like that. You can get kind of creative and provide some unique layouts, especially on desktop. Uh, Now, when we do push some updates to mobile, you could potentially do a little bit of creative things, such as if we go to mobile. Right now you have 2, so what you would be able to do in mobile is you'd be able to stretch one full, and then you could have 2, and then you could have 1. You could kind of flip-flop, do like a 1-2 combo. So that would be an idea of how we would allow clients in the future to use that as a mobile feature. Um, and the last thing I want to touch on isn't related to this, to the collection list section, but just want to also let you know that if you see there's rounded corners on these cards and that our buttons are circular, we do give you the option to adjust radiuses on the cards and the buttons um, and uh, and like fields. So just know that you do have the option to customize your cards and your buttons. You can have squares, you can have and you can adjust the radius there to make them more oval shaped, um, depending on the design you're looking for. So just want to let you know that's also in theme settings. So again, if you're curious of what all theme settings can do, watch the video on theme settings. With that being said, that's essentially all there is to know about the collection list section. I hope you enjoyed the video and that you're that much more prepared to use the DGD Crusade Shopify theme to maximize your site performance.